Strikes Back, Terminator 2, Aliens. All sequels considered better than their original films, exceptions to the rule that the original is always better. In film, that rule is almost universally accepted, but with video games and the inherent differences that they bring, sequels being better than their original games is far more common. Crash 2 bests Crash 1. Black Ops 2 created an entire generation of first-person shooter fans compared to its initial title, and today, we'll be looking at one of the first excellent game sequels, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. It's a testament to how good Sonic 2 really is when even today, as people bash on the series relentlessly, they'll always come back to this one argument. Well, that new Sonic game may suck, but Sonic 2 was and always will be great. It's all the more humorous that Sonic Team is too busy milking the crap out of Sonic 1, a game many people would consider inferior compared to this game. But I digress. Let's take a look at what went into the production of the game before it even released. So Sonic 1 sold well enough to warrant a sequel. Only 22 million copies, nothing too insane. Obviously, Sega wanted to capitalize on this massive success with a bigger and better game, and Yuji Naka agreed with them. But Sega and Naka couldn't see eye to eye on their visions for the project. Sega wasn't entirely happy with how Sonic 1 had been handled internally, with work efficiency being one of their main concerns. Naka grew weary of the politics, and instead of fighting the powers that be, he opted to quit working for Sega of Japan altogether. Mark Cerny, a man who at 18 helped design the game Marble Madness, was hired by Sega to open up a new studio in America that would act as a form of training grounds for up-and-coming developers. Using already established talent from America such as Cerny and Sega employees from Japan, the idea was to have a sort of feeder team that would learn from the best so they could eventually come to work for the best over in Japan. Many were hired, including the future creator of Spyro the Dragon, Craig Stitt. The team showed promise, but was a little rough around the edges for Cerny's liking. He had secured the director of Sonic 1, Hirokazu Yasuhara, whose pseudonym was Carol Yas in the original game's credits, but he felt the team needed one more thing to round them out. Mark then realized, hey, that guy that was responsible for creating Sonic is looking for work. Maybe he'd like to come join the company that he quit from. After promising Naka a higher salary and more directive power than he had held back in Japan, Naka accepted the position at the Sega Technical Institute, and production began almost immediately. While the STI cut their teeth with the game Kid Chameleon, Cerny knew that with Naka and Yasuhara on board, it was only natural that they be given the assignment of creating the inevitable sequel to Sonic the Hedgehog. The request was granted by the higher-ups at Sega, and Naka was very quick to introduce an idea he had been planning on bringing to the table. Naka wanted a simultaneous two-player mode, something not even the Mario games would use until New Super Mario Bros. Wii almost 2 decades later. STI agreed with the sentiment and figured the best way to implement it was to introduce a new main character into the fold. After an internal contest of sorts among both the STI and Sega of Japan, a two-tailed fox designed by Yasushi Yamaguchi won the day. His submitted name of choice was Miles Prower, but Sega didn't quite like it and opted to stick with just Tails. Yamaguchi was a sneaky man though, and snuck the Miles name wherever he could into both concept art and even in-game, making the Tails name the character's nickname and Miles Prower his given birth name. The team was promising, but issues arose with the culture clash between the Japanese side and American side. While nothing damaging to the finished product, the intense personality of Naka and the general mindset of work in Japan being far more devoted than the 9-to-5 idea of American labor, it became a hurdle for some of the fresh American devs to accept the fact that if they wanted to make this the best game possible, they would need to step up their game. Sega was even making things tough with an aggressive marketing campaign for the game, with multiple early builds of the game being shown off, one on Nickelodeon and one at a New York toy show, which was eventually stolen. As the release grew closer, the team realized they had gotten overambitious. What was initially planned to be an 18-zone epic only had 11 zones, and some of those zones were just repurposed levels from other zones. The game was so down to the wire, Sega had to fly out 13 extra staff members from Japan to help iron the game out. Things like the title screen and credits were so thrown together at the last minute, it resulted in miscredited staff members. However, against the odds, the game was finished in time. Released first in Japan on November 21st, 1992, it earned a simultaneous release in America and Europe on November 24th, which was dubbed Sonic Tuesday to really push the marketing. And it worked. The game sold 400,000 units on day one alone. And while nowadays that sounds pretty paltry compared to Dad of War and Insomniac's Spider-Man selling over 3 million units in one weekend, consider that this was all physical copies and it was on a Tuesday, not a Friday. 400,000 of anything on a Tuesday is impressive, let alone selling something that many times. But the development process that reminds me of working on a group project in high school and a release for retail workers that I don't even want to imagine. Is Sonic 2 just as worth playing as it was back in '92? Let's find out, shall we? Let's begin with the plot. After beating Robotnik in the first game, Sonic decides to explore the world, taking his trusty biplane the Tornado out for a spin. On nothing more than instinct, he decides to land on Wayside Island, where he begins blasting through the environment there. But he quickly realizes that he's being followed, and to his surprise, it's a two-tailed fox, an 8-year-old named Miles Prower. He was following Sonic because the other kids on the island bullied Tails for his birth deformity. You know, people make fun of the Sonic franchise for its lousy writing sometimes, and yeah, it can be kinda deserved, but in this case, if what I've heard about 90s culture is true, this might be one of the more relatable backstories they've ever written. Sonic is initially hesitant to befriend Tails, being a free spirit used to living alone, but after seeing Tails is able to keep up with his speed and even able to up the Tornado's performance, he chooses to take the kid under his wing. He also gives him the nickname Tails as a loving reminder to not be bothered by being unique. But good times aren't meant to last, as Robotnik makes his presence known on the island with a massive construction project that sprouts up out of nowhere. Sonic and Tails are quick to act and head off to stop the Mad Doctor. You'd think Robotnik would be a moron for following Sonic to the island after what happened in their last battle, but he realized that the Chaos Emeralds he and Sonic fought over last time were actually only 6 out of 7 total emeralds, and that the final piece of the collection lay on this island. He wants not only to collect the 6 from before, but he theorizes that the 7th emerald will make him unstoppable. Once again, a simple plot, but it does what all good sequels should. Builds on the world and increases the stakes without forgetting the core of the series, Sonic vs. Robotnik, a race to stop the other from achieving their goals. With Tails and the 7th Emerald in the mix, players are already intrigued by where things could go. But even cooler is seeing the story evolve through gameplay this time, the first of the classic series to do so. I'll delve more into this part when we get into the level design, but it's a super cool thing that Sega was ambitious enough to have a changing story, even if it was only a little touch here and there. We'll see in later games that they crank story details through gameplay way up, but this is the start of that trend and it's much appreciated. Gameplay-wise, we're operating on a similar system to last time. Sonic can run, jump, curl into a ball on slopes, all that jazz, but he comes rocking a new move that has all but defined his character since its inception in this game. The Spin Dash. By standing still, holding down, and mashing the jump button, Sonic will rev up a spinning ball of death that will accelerate him to top speed from a standstill and tear through any enemy it comes into contact with. This move makes going uphill a much less annoying experience, to the point where I no longer groan if I need to correct a mistake. I merely spin dash my way out of the problem. It is fantastic. There's also another smaller change that makes Sonic 2 much more visually engaging and satisfying to play for players: the removal of the speed cap. In Sonic 1, Sonic could only go a certain speed when players hit his top speed. If Sonic were to run down a slope in that game, he'd eventually stop accelerating. In Sonic 2, however, they removed this annoying feature. The level designers even made an entire stage around showing this gimmick off, Chemical Plant, where there are 2 massive slopes where the player can see just how fast Sonic can reach with no outside help, using only physics to reach his top speed. Even better is when boosters become involved, because Sonic will start to outpace the screen, running so fast that his sprite gets cut off from the right side of the screen. Thank goodness they didn't put enemies there, or I cannot imagine the amount of video essays on lousy game design we'd see for this game. Tails is also along for this adventure, but in this game he plays identically to Sonic. His only real contribution to the game is being the way for your younger sibling to jump into the action. Tails is relatively useless in this game. He can't fly via player control, only using the animation if he's off screen and needs to reappear, and he can't even break monitors on his own. The only useful feature he has is near invulnerability to hazards, as the only things that can kill him are drowning and crushing obstacles. This makes some boss fights with 2 players a joke, as now Robotnik can't even hurt who he's targeting. Now for the final new addition to the game, there are 7 Chaos Emeralds. Unlike the first game, where collecting them was purely for a better ending, in this game not only are there more opportunities to obtain them, but if you manage them, and that's a huge if, you unlock Super Sonic, the walking, not entirely talking Dragon Ball knockoff. In this form, Sonic moves faster, jumps higher, and is almost completely invulnerable. The only thing you need is 50 rings and to jump in the air, and boom, you're off. Sadly, this does have a drawback. You have to listen to this bland, repetitive super theme on loop for the entire time the super form is active, removing the fantastic OST from the background. It's partially why I will sometimes refuse to get the emeralds during runs, both as a self-challenge and to fully appreciate the game's music. So with all of the new gameplay elements out of the way, let's move on to the levels. Sonic 1's level design was lacking to say the least. With only 3 stages I could even say I remotely liked, the game didn't leave me with a very warm impression. Will Sonic 2 surpass this number? Let's find out. Emerald Hill Zone. How in the world this stage isn't used more by Sonic Team these days is baffling to me. It's Green Hill Zone, but on steroids. Faster, greener, hilly, it's a fun level. These 2 stages, yes 2, they thankfully shortened the zones from 3 to 2 stages for more level variety, are absolutely amazing and I never get bored of blazing through them. One of the best intro stages in Sonic history. Quote me on that. Chemical Plant Zone. The stage Sonic Team uses way too much from this game. I'd be a liar if the recent overuse of this stage hasn't soured my taste a little bit, but I would also be a petty fool to let that ruin an otherwise fantastic second level. Marble Zone wishes it was even a tenth of this fun. Everyone remembers their first time in this stage compared to Marble Zone. In this stage, you had huge slopes with massive speed, the rising chemical elevator with crushing and drowning deaths on the table, and the ridiculous speed boosters that occasionally placed it throughout. In Marble Zone, Aquatic Ruin Zone. Oh good, a Sonic water level. These things are world-renowned for their poor design, lack of fun, and overall slow movement. I can't believe after Labyrinth Zone in the last game they would even attempt another one. I mean, for the love of God, it's Sonic. Let me go fast and hey, wait a minute. Actually looks kind of fun. And guess what? It is! Okay, it's not as good as Emerald Hill or Chemical Plant, and the enemy and obstacle placement can get a little eyebrow raising at points, but this stage rewards skill by making it an option to completely avoid the water, if the player is able to stick to the high ground. Who knew that Obi-Wan's wisdom would apply to Sonic games?
High ground!
Casino Night Zone. For sure, casino levels have become a staple in the series after this game, but honestly I'm not sure why. Don't get me wrong, the stage looks nice, it's bright and colorful, and the general aesthetic is excellent, but the actual level feels a little bit too Sonic 1 for my liking, with a lot of bouncing around, waiting for elevators, and a slower paced platforming feel. But before anyone jumps me, I think the stage is still fun, just nothing really exciting. It's a perfectly average stage in a game that I know can do much better. Hilltop Zone. I've heard mixed things on this stage over the years. Some hate it for clearly recycling Emerald Hill assets and slower paced design at points, and I can't say I blame them for that. Others love it for the level design and creative set pieces, and to be honest, I'm in the later camp. The stages use slower platforming to its advantage, I find, because while there are some areas with suspended platforms that you have to wait to jump off, there are also areas where you must use speed to escape rising lava and crushing floors. It's far from the best stage in the game, but I hold a soft spot for it. Mystic Cave Zone. Before I even talk about this stage, I would like to explain to you just how much I adore this music. I love this song so much that before I owned a personal computer, or a smartphone, or even an iPod with internet capability, I would pull this game up on my Wii Virtual Console, use the sound test to listen to this song, and do my homework. Nowadays, I just pull up a rip online, but those days of a youthful me sitting at a TV working on spelling homework and listening to this music will always hold a special place in my heart. But I digress. On the topic of the actual level, it's a relatively decent level. The aesthetic is super cool with an emerald green and purple rock combination that I enjoy, but the level design itself is just okay. In fact, there's one point in the level infamously dubbed as the Pit by many, which is quite literally a pit of spikes so deep that it's impossible to escape even for Super Sonic. It makes no sense and only serves to gobble lives, and is one of the first instances I can remember being killed by a gotcha trap. And to anyone in the audience who isn't aware, a gotcha trap is where a game has an obstacle that, when you're aware of its existence, is relatively easy to avoid, but if you aren't aware of it, more often than not, it instantly kills you, wasting a life. These were far more often in older titles to make game overs more common and make players have to replay the game more. It artificially extends the game length, but thankfully this old design mentality is something Sonic games don't use too much. I repeat, too much. But yeah, Mystic Cave Zone. Good level, fantastic music. Moving on. Oil Ocean Zone. I feel like I should like this one more, but personally I think it's just okay at best. It's nothing offensive, and the Robotnik-based visual design is cool, starting that visual storytelling I mentioned earlier, but besides that, the stage doesn't offer too much for me to enjoy. Ideally, I like Sonic stages to have some sort of high-speed antics or at least an entertaining gimmick, and Oil Ocean has too many enemies placed in weird spots to encourage extremely high speeds, and the gimmicks are oil, which slows Sonic down, fans that serve to push Sonic around, and slides that, while they do make Sonic go fast, fling him high into the sky once they finish, meaning your horizontal momentum is completely moot. Which is just great. Cool. Hopefully the next stage is better. Metropolis Zone. Oh no, this was a mistake, Oil Ocean. I'm so sorry, please take me back. I'm sorry I ever insulted you. No, oh jeez, oh lord, I can't handle this, Sonic. Why would you do this? You can't, you couldn't just get me to come back. Please, help me. Oh my god! Sorry, this stage is a little, intense, to say the least. While the metallic graphics the level boasts are neat, I cannot stand for the life of me the enemy placement here. Without them, I feel this stage would be a reasonably light final Robotnik stage, but with our affectionately dubbed Big Three of Slicers, Shellcrackers, and Asterons, Sonic's ring count will never be above 0 for long here. And if I'm being honest, Asterons and Shellcrackers are, at worst, minor annoyances. But these guys, Slicers, I mean, wow. Words cannot properly describe the sheer agony these guys caused me as a child. Even today, knowing where they are, I still manage to get hit every once in a while, but ugh. Whoever at Sonic Team designed and placed these guys deserves to be smacked. Robotnik probably gave the guy a hearty raise though. He'd make an excellent evil genius. One thing to note, this is the only stage in the game with 3 zones because they repurposed another stage, Genocide City, into the 3rd stage here. The reasoning behind this was that the Japanese understanding of the word genocide was a little different than that of the English one, and Sega was worried it would end up being a little bit too intense for children. With how many times people have died in these stages though, I think it's fairly apt to say the least. Sky Chase Zone. The most leisurely chase of all time. Music that's calm and entirely not in tune with what the game wants you to feel, and the enemies are so lackadaisical in attacking Sonic that you can go through his bored animation cycle in this stage and not get hit. But there is a cool shot for a 16-bit game where Tails and Sonic fly by Robotnik's Wing Fortress, but besides that it's a fairly bland stage. Wing Fortress Zone. This stage is terrible. Full of bottomless pits, music that's not tense enough to earn that penultimate zone feeling, nor action feeling enough to feel like a speed through an airship, and it's so slow. Like, unbearably slow, to the point where it's actively encouraging the player to avoid full-speed platforming in this stage. In a Sonic game! That's just ridiculous. I can't say too much else about this stage. The graphics are okay, but nothing extraordinary, and even the in-game storytelling takes a back seat, because the story takes place in a cutscene after the level. Robotnik escapes his Wing Fortress in a rocket ship, with Sonic grabbing onto the rocket and hanging on with just his hands. I repeat, Sonic, using only his hands, holds onto a rocket, flying into the upper atmosphere, at the bare minimum, and he survives. Video game logic at its finest, people. But with that, Robotnik has finally led us to his indie game, the Disney Lawsuit Zone.
Wait a minute, how did this happen? We're smarter than this.
Apparently not.
So there's this weird music at the beginning of the stage that I like, but it only plays for a few seconds before you run into Silver Sonic, the first in a long line of robotic doppelgangers for the Blue Blur. This boss fight is made challenging by the lack of rings you have throughout the entire stage, as one wrong move will kill you. Thankfully though, after this you corner Robotnik and hey, he's managing to outrun Sonic! Now I understand why Sonic didn't chase him after the first game. He knew it was a fruitless effort. With this, Robotnik jumps into a Megazord of himself and prepares a final assault on Sonic. To the tune of genuinely climactic final boss music, Sonic and Robotnik square off for the second time. Now without rings and for first time players, this fight can be a pain. If you die, you're sent back to before the Silver Sonic boss fight, which is an excellent thing for patience levels. But thankfully with time and patience and plenty of game overs, I've gotten decent enough at this fight to not completely suck at it, and, well, game over. After 16 hits, the Death Egg robot goes down and causes a violent chain reaction, forcing Sonic to escape the Death Egg by flinging his body out of the window. Depending on if you manage to collect the Chaos Emeralds or not, Tails will either catch Sonic on the tornado or come and fly alongside his super form, finishing off Sonic 2. Now there are two things I didn't cover in the actual stage portion, and that's the boss fights and the special stages. The boss fights are, well, pathetic, just like the first game. In fact, the first boss in the game, the slow-moving drill going back and forth, is so infamous that it's even used in a lot of Sonic fan animations just to show how pathetic it really is. The final boss, or at least Silver Sonic and the Death Egg robot, are pretty good, but that's really only because of the lack of rings making it challenging. It's more artificial difficulty than anything else. But now, the special stages. Oh my god. So, okay, the half-pipe special stages are nothing new to the Sonic franchise by 2018. Everyone's seen them. They've been in multiple Sonic games, Sonic 2, Sonic Rush, Sonic 4 Episode 2, just to name a few. They're whatever in those games. But in Sonic 2, they are awful. They are garbage. I have never, ever beaten them legitimately. I have to use save states on an emulator, slowing the game down, and making sure that I don't hit anything. Because, ladies and gentlemen, Sonic 2 special stages are ridiculous. So, let's consider this. Your draw distance, or at least the sprites showing up on screen because there really isn't draw distance in a 2D game, is almost non-existent. You have to know where everything is, whether it be rings, which you need to progress in the special stages to get the Chaos Emeralds, the obstacles, which will knock rings off of Sonic, more than often than not, kicking you out of the special stage entirely because one wrong move means you don't have enough rings to progress, and it means life or death in these stages. And for the love of God, do not let the AI come along with you here. If you're playing with two players, and the second player knows what they're doing, it makes it easier. If the AI, or a player that doesn't know what they're doing is following you, just give up, because they will get hit, lose any rings that they collect, and you won't have enough rings to finish the level. The funny thing is that in the updated version of the game, they actually lowered the ring counts for a new playable character, but I have to bring that up next time because, well, story reasons. But guys, I'm serious. All of the supersonic footage you're watching in this video is via a cheat code in the game. I'm 95% sure that Sonic Team knew how BS these special stages were, because Sonic 3 doesn't have a supersonic cheat code. Sonic and Knuckles doesn't have a supersonic cheat code, and to my knowledge, Sonic CD doesn't have a cheat code to get all of their emeralds either. This is the only game with that feature in the Classic series. And I'm pretty sure it's because of how badly designed these stages are. They even get updated in the mobile port of this game to have fluid, very smooth animations, but that doesn't help. The stages are just poorly designed, and even though you can see farther up ahead in the HD mobile port, it still makes it a nightmare, because as nice as the game looks now, it just... it doesn't help. The design is definitely a little more easier to bear at this point, but still, I truly, honestly cannot put into words just how much I despise the Sonic 2 half-pipe levels. I don't mind them in other games, but there's a reason that I couldn't actually write a script for this segment and decided to freestyle it, because I despise the half-pipe. And that's all I'm gonna say on that. So I've talked about the music throughout the stages, but to sum it up, this soundtrack blows Sonic 1's out of the water. Masato Nakamura absolutely brought his A-game with this soundtrack. While not every song is a banger, the sheer awesomeness this soundtrack brings to the table goes to show just how much better this game is compared to the first game. Emerald Hill is better than Green Hill, Chemical Plant is better than Marble Zone, etc. In fact, Wing Fortress is the only song in this game I think even remotely touches the below average category. Indeed, this OST is so impressive. If you have any free time this weekend, please be sure to give it a listen. It is fantastic. Though at this point it's no secret, Sonic 2 is much better than Sonic 1 in almost every way. By no means the perfect video game, but it is, in most aspects, almost the perfect video game sequel. It does everything a good sequel should. It expands on what the first game does, improves everything that the first game did, and it is just incredible fun. If you are at all interested in the classic Sonic games, this is the one I recommend you start with. The first game is nice for nostalgic reasons, this game is good because it's good. After replaying this game for the review, it's clear to see why so many people hold this as their favorite Sonic game, and I can't say I don't blame them. But for me, I still maintain that there's one classic game over this one. But we'll get to that when we get to that one. I would be a fool to not recommend this game to platforming fans and to Sonic fans alike. Sonic 2 is too good to look over. Okay, yeah, maybe I could have ended off on a better pun, but you know what? I stand by it. I know what I'm about, and bad puns are what I'm about. Anyways, next time on the Sonic the Hedgehog retrospective, we are going to be looking at Sonic's first game on a new home console, the Sega CD. Will this new system prove a comfy home for the Blue Blur? Well, you'll have to come next time to find out. Anyways, if you got to the end of the review, I want to thank you so much for sticking around. It greatly warms my heart to know that you got to this point. And if you have any thoughts or comments on Sonic 2 itself, whether it be a personal anecdote or just your thoughts on the matter, please leave it down in the comments below. I am always reading down there, and I love hearing what you guys have to say. And remember, before you leave tonight, be nice to each other, have a fantastic night, and I will see you guys in the next review. Ciao.